Hi everyone. First of all, sleep. It's a big deal, isn't it? It's absolutely big deal. I'm just thinking about how much sleep do we get? What's the impact of that? How we can help that? So hopefully today's presentation might give you some insight into that. I need to apologise. I've had no voice for a long while. It's come back now, but apologies if it's a little bit wobbly. Okay, so just for 2 seconds, I'm not asking you to tell me or anything, but just think about, what does sleep mean to you? How does it feel when you get a good night's sleep? How does it feel when you get a poor night's sleep? What's the impact on you the next day if you've had a poor night's sleep? So for example, if I had a bad night's sleep, I may feel physically exhausted. I might feel mentally just a little bit, exhausted or cotton wool brain, not be able to focus or concentrate. My reflexes mightn't be as quick. I wonder whether you feel any of these as well. What's it feel like when you're sleep deprived? In fact, in centuries gone by, in different cultures, they used sleep deprivation as a way of torture, didn't they? So sleep impacts us in lots of ways, doesn't it? So some of the things I've got on screen here, lack of sleep can impact our learning. It can impact our concentration. Poor sleep can increase risk-taking behaviours. It can impact on our school attainment. It can impact on our relationships, whether that's with our friends or our families, with our jobs, with our schools. Poor sleep can increase anxiety. It can increase our susceptibility to depression. Poor sleep can give us big emotional responses, make us irritable, give us low mood, lethargy, hyperactivity. How many times do we say when our children might be really overly excited, like, oh, they're overtired? We say things like that all the time. So poor sleep can have those outward behavioral responses that come in line with things like hyperactivity. So poor sleep impacts all of these, doesn't it? It mightn't surprise you to know that approximately 25% of all children will have sleep difficulties. Think of our children in the early years. There's lots going on for them, isn't there? Staying in bed can be quite a tricky thing for our children. But just think about that 25% of all children. You add in some neurodivergence, some perhaps special education needs. I've just got a couple of things on screen there that might impact. When you add in these, that amount raises. So it's no longer 25%. It could be approximately 80% of those with a neurodivergent condition or a special education need can have difficulty with sleep. Now, those difficulties aren't the exact same difficulties from person to person. There can be lots of reasons why. But just look at that figure, 80%. So I know that those on the call today, a huge proportion of you will be feeling tired right now. And that will be due to perhaps your child not sleeping or having interrupted intermittent sleep. Bit of sleep science here. Don't worry, I'm not going to overwhelm you with it. But on screen here, we've got what's called a hypnograph. And this is a picture of how typical sleep shows. So there's a misconception that we go to sleep, have a big long dream, and wake up in the morning. That's not the case. During our sleep, we have various sleep phases, and we have various sleep cycles. And that's what you're seeing on the screen here. So the different phases of sleep. So obviously now we're all wide awake. At least I hope you are. I hope I haven't bored you just yet. We're all wide awake. The next stage down, you see the lines going across, is almost awake. When you're just nodding off. Then we have a period of light sleep. So the light sleep you can see on screen there in the orange bits. After the light sleep, we have our deep sleep. It's hard to wake us up from our deep sleep. So there are the different stages of our sleep. And within these stages, we have sleep cycles. So an average sleep cycle only lasts for about 90 minutes. And then we go into the next sleep cycle. So during the sleep cycles, we go through those different phases of sleep. So let's just have a little look at that. So, you know, in any night's sleep, we have multiple sleep cycles and go into these different stages at multiple times. So if you follow the dips on the screen, there will be wide awake, we'll go to bed, we'll go through the green bit, almost awake. So you can still hear things going on around you. You still know what's happening. Then you go into your light sleep. Light sleep, just what it says on the tin. You're asleep. However, you are still aware of things in your environment. Good way of perhaps describing this is, have you ever, think of a Sunday afternoon. You may have had a big full roast dinner, sat on the sofa and decided just to have a little nod off while you're watching the telly. Somebody comes in and turns the telly over. What do? We go, I was watching that. The fact was we weren't watching it. We were asleep. We might have been snoring, our eyes were closed, but we could tell differences in our sensory environment. So what we can hear, changes in light, even though our eyes are closed, we can detect changes in light, changes in temperature, we can detect movement. So during our light sleep, all of these things can still impact us. So we go through our light sleep, but we go into the red bit there. The red bit is our deep sleep. So during this time, our breathing slows down. Our heart rate slows down. We're not making any or many movements. We're quite still. And this part of our sleep is where our body does all its fabulous mending and we grow when we sleep. Well, me, not anymore. I'm still only 5 foot tall, but that's beside the point. During this type of sleep, this deep sleep, is when our children grow, when we replenish, you know, our physical energy. And then we come back out of our deep sleep, back into light sleep. You'll see there we've got a period of dream sleep there in the yellow. Dream sleep is very much linked, you know, very close to being awake, and that's why we remember our dreams. But dream sleep, which you might also know as REM sleep, is the time where our brains do all that fabulous stuff. So in our deep sleep, it's our body doing the work. During our dream sleep, our brain sort of puts away think about our brain being like a filing cabinet of things that we can recall when we need to. So our dream sleep helps us archive our learning and our memories and things like that in a way that we can recall them when we need them. Our REM sleep is important for our emotional health, our mental health, our cognition and focus and concentration the next day. And then we go into the next stage, you know, our next sleep cycle, and it repeats during the night. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, there's some green bits there she hasn't mentioned yet. So during our night, we have lots of almost awake moments. And for the majority of them, we won't remember them. You might sort of remember some. You might remember opening your eyes and looking at the clock. Then you don't remember anything else. You might remember fixing your duvet, or looking at your partner, or looking at the pile of washing in the corner, whatever it was. You might remember a very slight thing and then go back to sleep again. We all have these. And thinking back, in our evolution, when we, you know, didn't live in nice, safe houses, we might have been living out in the wild, in caves or huts or whatever. We would sleep in short bursts because we would have to be aware of predators. So during our evolution, we've kept hold of this reflex, this almost awake moment. And it's inbuilt, you know, it's sort of checking our safety. But now, in the here and now, we don't necessarily always remember them. However, for some people, these almost awake moments can become fully awake moments. And that might be because of sensory difference. That might be because of difference of attention. That might be because of pain or physical feelings. That might be because of anxiety. So there's lots of factors that might prompt us to be fully awake when actually our bodies are only intending to scan our surroundings for safety. Our sleep drive, or whatever you want to call it, our circadian rhythm is the proper, you know, official name for it, but whatever you want to call it, our sleep drive, our night-day difference is controlled by a part of our brain called the hypothalamus. And that part of our brain responds to light and dark. So our eyes perceive the light and dark, you know, whether it's morning, whether it's going dark into evening. And that's what prompts our hypothalamus to go, okay, let's activate our sleep hormones. So our sleep hormones include lowering our body temperature, because when we're asleep, our body temperature lowers. It includes the hormones needed for our sleep drive. So our hormones, you know, that, like I said, I'm not going to go too sciencey, too clinical. The hormones we're going to talk about are cortisol and melatonin. You might well be very familiar with these words, with these terms. But if you look at the screen on there, I've shown you where our hormones peak. Okay, so our hypothalamus has taken its cues from our surroundings, its cues from daylight or nighttime or darkness, and it tells us when to release these hormones. So look at the yellow line there. The yellow line is cortisol. Cortisol is, for the purposes of today, our daytime hormone, keeps us awake. Cortisol is also our stress hormone, so we don't want loads of it all the time. But cortisol is needed for us to wake up. In fact, it's cortisol that wakes us up of a morning. So right from early hours, the cortisol starts to build. And it builds and builds and builds up until around about mid-morning, where we have a peak. Have you ever felt that mid-morning is when you've got most energy? That's where I feel it. After mid-morning, you know, 10:30, sort of coming on to lunchtime, it starts to dip. And quite often we get a big dip around about 3 o'clock. I wonder whether anyone can recognise that, you know, mid-afternoon slump. And that's our cortisol doing that. But actually our cortisol needs to come down nice and steady, so it's low during, you know, our evening and our nighttime for us to stay asleep. If cortisol's too high at that point, you know, we might feel anxious, we might feel, you know, a little bit unsettled. So it should be nice and low during our night. And then it'll start to ramp up again to wake us up for the morning again. Look at the other line. The other line is melatonin. So some of you might be familiar with the word melatonin, and some of you may well have children who take melatonin to help them sleep. It's important to remember melatonin isn't a sleeping tablet. Melatonin is the hormone used to tell us we're sleepy, not necessarily to put us to sleep. Okay, so have a look at the screen there. The melatonin, you can see it coming down during that darkness period there. So as our cortisol's rising in the early hours of the morning to wake us up, our melatonin is dipping off. During the day, we're not utilizing melatonin. We don't need to because it's daytime, but it's important for us to see daylight for us to make this sleepy hormone. So it's nice and low during the day, but then it ramps up for early evening to tell us actually it's time to wind down. And then it's at its peak between about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then it comes down again. So like I said, not getting too sciencey, but we need those two chemicals to tell us when to feel sleepy. Sleep's also regulated by our sleep-wake homeostasis. And I like to think of this as a battery. So of a morning, your sleepiness battery is depleted. You're awake, you don't feel sleepy. As the day goes on, your sleepiness battery might raise. So it builds the need to go asleep. Sometimes we might have a nap, mightn't we? So our sleepiness battery goes back down. Have you ever had a nap in the afternoon and thought, oh, I've spoiled my sleep for tonight? This is why. So if we're having naps, we need to make sure that they're short, maybe under 40 minutes as a nap. You know, certainly for us as adults and our older children. You know, infants need the sleep, don't they? So thinking about, you know, do our children need naps? If so, let's put them in early on. Because if we deprive our children of a nap, it might be even harder to get our child to sleep at night, because all of those chemicals, those cortisol and everything will be fighting against us. So we need to be mindful of our sleep battery. We encounter lots of difficulties, don't we, with our children going to bed. That might be due to lots of different things. Bedtime resistance is a big one, isn't it? You know, I'm too busy to sleep. I'm too excited to sleep. Sleep's boring. I'll put sleep off. We do this all the time, even as adults, don't we? I'll just finish watching this film. I'll just do me emails. I'll just scroll through Facebook. We do this all the time. Bedtime resistance. The more we push back the bedtime, the more our stress responses might come out, because our body is fighting against us. Stimulation. So I'd mentioned before about our environment, didn't I? When I showed you the hypnograph, and I'd said about those partially awake moments, how our environment can impact us. So stimulation, what are we thinking about? You know, what are we doing? What's going on around us? Think about our devices. Okay, so on the screen, think about bedtime resistance, stimulation, and blue light impact. Our devices do all of this, don't they? Like I said, I'll just watch this program. I'll just play my game. While watching those programs or playing those games, what's happening to us? Okay, think about the games that our children might play. How exciting are they? They're really good fun, aren't they? We might be whizzing around corners on our car. We might be scoring goals. We might be getting the prizes. What does that do to us? Raises our excitement, doesn't it? Cortisol also plays a part in excitement. So we're raising our cortisol levels. If our cortisol levels are raised, it's going to be harder for us to go to sleep. So not only are we putting the bedtime off because we want to play or want to watch or want to do something, the stimulation that's happening while we're doing that, or, you know, watching our program that's exciting or funny or scary or whatever it might be. And also the blue light impact. So all of our electronic devices emit a light that's similar to the light waves of daylight. That tells our brain, actually, it might be daylight right now. And as we know, when it's daylight, we don't produce melatonin, which is our sleepy hormone, which is needed to sleep. So for all of those reasons, our environment, our activities can very much impact whether we have a good night's sleep. Our surroundings impact us. So think about our senses. You know, on screen there, I've got a little illustration wheel there, you know, so what we can see, what we can smell, our vestibular input, which tells us, perhaps it's our spirit level, isn't it? You know, it tells us where we are in relation to our surroundings, whether we're grounded, whether we're safe, whether we're steady. Think about what we can hear. Think about what we can feel, not only just with our hands, our whole surface areas. How do our pajamas feel? How does our mattress feel? How about our bedding? And think about all the internal things happening, our interoception. Are we too hot? Are we too cold? Are we still hungry? Do we need a wee? All of those types of things. Our proprioception is perhaps our body's sat nav for itself, that tells us where we are in relation to, you know, our body parts. It tells us how much force we use or how much force we need to feel safe and secure and regulated. Think about our gustatory input. What can we taste and feel within our mouths? You know, all of these things can very much impact us. So when we're thinking about, you know, going to sleep, how we can encourage a good night's sleep, think about what we can see, what we can hear, what we can taste, what we can touch, what we can smell. A really good idea is to go lie in your child's bed. You know, have a little wiggle in your child's bed. Does it feel comfortable? Does it rock? Think about that vestibular input. If we're on maybe a bunk bed, is it moving? Might that impact us? What can we see? Are our curtains blocking out the light? What can we hear from outside? Is our bedroom painted or decorated in such a wonderful, bright way that actually it might increase our excitement or increase our interest when actually we want it to be nice and calm? So think about all of our senses and how all of those might impact. So here's some brief tips here. Consider the temperature of our room. Our room for a good night's sleep should be somewhere between 16 and 18 degrees. So that's cooler than you'd have your living room, isn't it? Your living room, you'd likely have maybe, I don't know, 20, 21 degrees. Our body temperature has to drop to go to sleep and stay asleep. So our bedroom should be cooler. If our bedrooms are dark, it helps with those melatonin cues, doesn't it? So when we're winding down for bedtime, maybe shut our curtains, turn off the main light and maybe put a lamp on. You know, by lowering the light will increase our melatonin production. But think about mornings. You know, are our curtains blocking out the light? Are our children waking up? You know, at the moment it's summer. I wish somebody would tell the weather that, but it's summer and the sun comes up, I don't know, 4:20. Are our children awake at 4:20 because they can see daylight coming through their curtains or their blinds? So thinking about that, you know, is that impacting? Think about the colour of our room or how our rooms are decorated. I'll give you a little personal insight here. My son, you know, many moons ago, when he was very little, he was football mad. We decorated his room in the most amazing football room that I could even imagine. You know, we decorated his walls with a big his team's crest. We had football memorabilia everywhere. He had football memorabilia, light shade, bedspread, curtains, rug, pictures, you name it. It looked wonderful and he loved it. Could he sleep in there? Not a chance. It was too stimulating for him. So think about how restful our rooms are. Is there lots of busyness? And I'm not just talking about untidy rooms. Even tidy rooms can be busy. Like my son's, I had all of that going on. Is it pulling their attention? So rooms should be restful, things put away. If we know that our child's interest or attention might be grabbed during the night, think about those brief awakenings. Consider what we can hear. Do we need silence? Do we need some noise? Some people need like white noise or a radio on very quiet to be able to sleep. Consider our nightwear. What does it feel like? If our children during the day have sensory needs for their clothing, well, do you know what? Same's going to be said for the night. Can they feel labels or seams? Is a bedding, the pajamas too thick, too cool? Would they prefer a night shirt instead of a two-piece? You know, so think about our bedding, the bed itself, you know, and our memory mattresses can be quite warm, can't they? You know, so increase our body temperatures. Is that the case? Is the bed uncomfortable? Is there a spring coming through? What's our bedding like? For some of us, you know, think about our sensory needs. For some of us, we need a lot of that gentle proprioception. So we might need lots of bedding to make us feel safe and comfortable and cozy. For others, they'll throw the blankets off and not want anything covering because their sensory need doesn't want anything around us. So consider that. Make sure our rooms are screen free. So think about what I was saying before about the bedtime resistance, the stimulation, and also the blue light. You know, think about our bedtime associations. You know, if we associate our rooms and, you know, going to sleep with watching screens, well, that's going to impact our night's sleep, isn't it? So again, they're distraction free. So whether that be our rooms, our toys, our storage, all of these things might give us a little bit of insight into what's happening for our child. Here's the thing. Our children are more likely to wake if their environment has changed while they've been asleep. How many of us might have a child that falls asleep on the sofa? Carry them up gently and quietly, put them into bed, only for them to start, you know, shouting down for us or coming back down in, I don't know, 20 minutes time or whatever. During those, do you remember before, during the sleep cycles, on those almost awake moments, if our child has gone to sleep on the sofa, all happy and content, and on those almost awake, they've opened one eye and thought, I wasn't here before, I was downstairs. Those, you know, potentially awake moments are going to be fully awake moments, aren't they? How many of us might lie with our child while they go to sleep and then move away, only for our child to wake up, realise we're not there, and then shout for us? The same can be said for having the light on, for having the telly on, for those children who might fall asleep with the telly on. Well, actually, they might wake up and think, oh, the conditions have changed while I've been asleep. What's happening? And that might make them, you know, fully awake, interrupted sleep, possibly distressed, possibly dysregulated. So we can keep the conditions consistent right the way through their sleep time. It's going to reduce the chances of waking. So, bedtime routines. I get lots of people saying to me about bedtime routines, about them starting as they're taking their child up to bed. Well, a bedtime routine might start a lot earlier than that for us to ready ourselves to go to sleep. And when we're starting a routine, what type of things are we thinking about? If we consider typical sleep behaviour, like we've got on screen, like the slide I showed you before, we might be able to work out where our child's difficulties are. So keeping a sleep diary can be really, really helpful for us to unpick where those challenges might lie. So we might want to consider what time we start our bedtime routine. What does that look like in our family? What time actually is bedtime? So, okay, what time do they go up to their rooms, get into bed, and we tell them it's bedtime? Actually, then, what time do they go to sleep? So bedtime might mean that we read stories. Bedtime might mean that we have so different people in different houses will have different rules, won't they? Different routines. So if we're looking at a sleep diary, what time did we go to bed? What time did we go to sleep? What time did they wake up? Was there any night waking? If so, how long was it? What time was it? How often was it? When they were going back to sleep, was it easy to drop back off to sleep, or did it take some time? Were they able to self-settle, or did they need some, co-regulation to settle? And then what time are our children waking in the morning? So when we're doing a sleep diary, these are the types of things that we'll be considering. So for a sleep diary, it might be helpful to have it in 2 parts. So we might want to complete in the morning. So what time our child went to bed, what time did they fall asleep, how many times did they wake up during the night, and for how long, and then what time did they wake up in the morning. So that's given us the facts about the times. But then thinking in our evenings, was there any caffeine involved? Because we know lots of foods and drinks contain caffeine, and caffeine can, interrupt our sleep. Science has said, suggested that it takes about 4 hours for caffeine to get out of our system. So if we're drinking or eating anything that involves caffeine, within 4 hours of our bedtime, it might be impacting our night's sleep. So it might be having a think about, was there any caffeine? Is that involved? Is that impacting? For some people, that'll be a yes. And for some people, that'll be a no. Exercise. Did we exercise that day? Exercise is really, really important for our sleep routine. And that might sound a little bit mad. We need to be active during the day to be able to have, a good night's sleep. Now, the time we do the exercise is really important. I've worked with families in the past when they've said, my child doesn't sleep at all, and we'll unpick what's happening and things like that. And they'll have said, we'll put them on the trampoline before bed to tire them out. Actually think about that. If we're exercising just before bedtime, if we're really active just before bedtime, what does that do for us? It might tire out our bodies, but actually it's going to increase our excitement, increase our cortisol, increase our adrenaline, which will make it really, really hard to sleep. So the exercise should be done, in good time for us to reduce those hormones again, those adrenaline and cortisol, reduce them again to be nice and calm and ready for sleep. We might want to think about how many naps we've had. If we've had a nap, and if we did, when did we have a nap? We might want to consider what we did before bed. So our bedtime routine should have something, calming and relaxing on the run up to bedtime. Like it said, when we're talking about exercise just now, we need an opportunity for all of those excitement or even anxious hormones to come back down. So what did I do before bed? So if we know before bed we had a really exciting time, we might see that actually that's impacted on what time we fell asleep, or did we keep asleep? Whereas if we're doing something nice and calm, we might see actually that's more conducive for our night's sleep. Our mood can impact as well. So think about our child's mental health. Think about, did they have a good day? Did they have a bad day? Was there something that happened during that day that was worrying or stress-provoking? Are they nervous for the next day? So all of these things can help us build up a picture of our child's sleep. So what might indicate that our child's having a poor night's sleep? If it takes more than 30 minutes to fall asleep, it might mean that actually shifting their bedtime slightly later might be helpful for them to go to bed, fall asleep and stay asleep. Because, I don't know about you, but certainly I know if I go to sleep and it's taken me a long time to fall asleep, I'm more likely to become stressed. I'm more likely to become anxious. I'm more likely to be, busying myself with, other distractions, which in turn will make it even harder. So if our child has taken more than 30 minutes to fall asleep, we might want to push their bedtime back maybe 15 minutes and see whether that helps. If our child's waking during the night, can we identify why that is? Do they wake up every time we're on our way up to bed ourselves? Is it because we flushed the chain and the toilet is noisy? Could it be that the landing's creaky? Could it be that there's traffic outside? Thinking about when our children wake up, what was the reason? Are they waking because they're hungry? Are they waking because they need the bathroom? If that's the case, maybe a small snack before bed, or maybe making sure they go to the toilet before bed might help. Think about the naps. Are they age appropriate? If a nap is age appropriate, well, if they nap too early in the day, it might mean that they're more sleep deprived during the night. Think about that sleepiness battery that we were talking about before. However, if it's too late, it might be that their sleep drive might not be there, so they're not tired at bedtime. Consistency is really, really important. So I would always advocate for going to bed at the same time each night, even weekends and holidays. So you might want to, 15 minutes, during the weekend, like summer holidays, you might want to even up to half an hour, but keep them consistent bedtimes and consistent wake times, because that will strengthen our inner sleep drive, our circadian rhythm. So bedtime routine ideally should begin at least an hour before we're expecting our child to go to bed. And our sleep routine, our bedtime routine, should be predictable. We should be doing the same thing each night. And that in itself, that routine will encourage those circadian rhythms. We know when we do this, our bodies are slowing down, ready for sleep. We need to turn off our screens in the hour before bed. And that's not just because of the blue light interruption. Think what I'd said before about the sensory impact, the bedtime resistance, the sensations we might feel when we're playing that game or watching that cartoon or all of those things. So turning our screens off helps us lower all of those excitement hormones and increase our melatonin. Now, I appreciate for some of our children, turning a screen off may not be possible. And especially, in my experience, that might be our children who may, our autistic children, for example. If that's the case, please do make sure you put the blue light filter onto the device. So although that mightn't help with any bedtime resistance or excitement, it might help just with the blue light. So in that hour before bed, we can perhaps put in some calming activities. Anything that uses our fine motor skills is ideal. Craft activities, colouring in, Lego, jigsaws, anything that involves our fine motor skills and is nice and calm, is consistent with a good night's sleep. Think about what time we're eating. Have you ever had a big meal and it's laid upward, and when you go to bed, you're like, oh, I can still feel that meal. So if we don't give our food time to digest properly, we may well feel, uncomfortable to go to sleep. So consider our eating times. If we eat too late, well, then we might be too full to go to sleep. If we eat too early, we might be too hungry to go to sleep. If we're finding our child is waking up hungry during the night, like I said earlier on, maybe putting a small bedtime snack into place might help, keep their tummies full enough to have a good night's sleep. But the types of food that we eat can impact. So whole foods such as grains, whole grains, cereals, or dairy foods, milk, things like that are very, very helpful for sleep. So if we do need a bedtime snack, having something that is conducive for good sleep. So like I said, foods like whole foods and cereals and dairy products all contain a amino acid called tryptophan. Tryptophan changes to melatonin. It goes through a series of change and helps us make melatonin. So if we are needing a bedtime snack, maybe a small bowl of a low sugar cereal with some milk, maybe, I don't know, an oaty biscuit, a low sugar oaty biscuit. Things like that might be helpful to keep our children from feeling hungry through the night, and by way of increasing the melatonin as well. Like I said before, exercise right before bed can be detrimental to our night's sleep. So, the guidance says between 2 and 3 hours before bed, we shouldn't be doing any strenuous exercise. That could be difficult in our families, can't it? Think about after-school clubs. Think about football practice, taekwondo practice, dance practice, or whatever it is. If that's after school, it may well be impacting on our child's sleep. However, it's important for our children to do those activities. So what I would suggest is, if exercise can't be avoided, and certainly don't put your child on the trampoline right before bed, like I said before, but if exercise can't be avoided in the 3 hours before bed, limit it as early as possible, and then make sure you do lots of calming activities afterwards, trying to bring everything back down again. So lots of input that might include lots of positive proprioception. Some of our children might like weighted blankets or cuddles with the dog or those types of things. All of those can help lower those daytime hormones to be able to start us making those nighttime hormones. So my tip there, if we can't avoid busyness or excitement, make sure we put lots and lots and lots of calming activities back in. Children might find sleep time anxious. They might be worried about the day that's passed. They might be worried about the tomorrow, what's going to happen. For some of our children, separation anxiety can be a big thing. When parents leave the room, when siblings leave the room. So if our children are anxious at bedtime, putting in lots of reassurance can help. If there is a bit of separation anxiety, if you remember what I said before, if we lie with our child till they go to sleep, well, actually, when they wake up and we're not there, that's going to give them those fully awake moments. So if we can try and build in a routine where we leave the room before they fall asleep, that may be helpful for a good night's sleep. But we need to plan for that, don't we? We can't just go in and say, okay, from today onwards, we're going to do this. So it might include giving special items to look after this teddy for me and give it back in the morning. Or look, and put a photograph next to your bed. So those types of things for them to look after overnight might help them understand that actually you are going to return the next day. For those sleep bedtime anxieties, that can be very, very helpful. We might want to involve our child in creating a bedtime routine. For lots of our children, they feel that bedtime is out of their control. It's something they're told to do. You must go to bed right now. By involving them in creating a routine before bed, gives them a little bit of control, doesn't it? Gives them a little bit of input. So helping them with that bedtime routine will keep them engaged, keep them motivated with that bedtime routine, and help them feel like they own that. For some of our children, a visual timetable might be helpful. So pictures of us brushing our teeth, pictures of us going to bed, pictures of us waking up in the morning, so they can see the full cycle of sleep and be reassured by that. So for some of our children, that's really, really helpful. Grow clocks and other visuals might be helpful for some of our children. In my experience, it's important to think about the language we use about going to sleep, especially when our children are anxious. On screen there, I suppose that is quite an extreme example. But if we say, oh, the hamster's gone to sleep, when actual fact the hamster's died? What's that telling our child about when we're telling them to go to sleep? So considering the language we use about going to sleep can impact whether our children feel anxious or not. So consider what we're talking about when we're going to sleep, what we're talking about when we're waking up from sleep. And that can be really helpful, and put in that positive sleep association. If our children are anxious, let's help them externalize that anxiety before going to bed in a helpful way. For some of our children, worry eaters, for our smaller children, worry eaters, worry monsters, where we write down our worry and the monster eats it and you zip it back up and it's gone. We might have a special toy who we tell our worries to, whether it's a doll or a teddy or a car or something that our child feels safe with. We can tell those worries, externalize those worries. For our older children, a worry box might be helpful to externalize, put it away. For some, to screw it up and put it in the bin. For some of us, it's just to talk it through. Whichever works for your child best, but thinking of a way that we can externalize that worry so they can take it out of the brain and not have to think about it again. So encouraging these worry box, worry eaters, worry conversations can help empower our children with the knowledge that they can externalize that and have a good night's sleep. I like to end the day with positive things. So whether it's with our children, thinking about what happy things have happened today, what went well, what was good, what did we like? Oh, it might have been really sunny, which was lovely. We might have seen, I don't know, Grandad. We might have seen our friend. We might have gone to the park. All of these things can help build up those positive emotions, which are really helpful before going to sleep. I even say that for adults, thinking about perhaps gratitude, what we're grateful for during the day. All of those types of things helps us increase our positive emotions, decrease our negative emotions, and help stave off stress, anxiety, and worry. So make our bedtimes positive. Consider the environment. Is our environment conducive to sleep? Think about our sleep associations. That's a tricky one. If we often tell our child to go to their room as a punishment, what sleep associations do they have? What do they associate with their room? If they associate their room with punishment, well, it stands to reason that they might associate bedtime with punishment as well. Something that they don't want to do, don't deserve to do. If we put in lots of happy, joyful, or comfortable sleep associations, our children are more likely to want to go to sleep. Establishing a bedtime routine. Routine is really, really important, and I can't stress that enough. So starting our bedtime routine at round about the same time every night, having the same process. And this is important, if you're thinking about our child who might perhaps split their week between, parents or caregivers who might spend lots of time in a relative's house. It's important that we all work on the same page. So what happens in our house is the same as that happens in, grandparents' house or friends' house, or, keeping that bedtime routine. And even when we're on holiday, keeping it as samey as possible will help. Praise our child for things that are going well within that routine. So think about what I'd said about those sleep associations. If we associate sleep with being a pleasant wind down and sleep experience, we're more likely to engage in it. Try to ignore the negatives, because if we're bringing attention to any negatives there, we're ramping up those stress hormones again, aren't we? So where it's safe and appropriate to do so, try and ignore the negatives, but put in lots of praises for things that are going well. If we are using rewards to motivate our child, we've got to remember to never take away or put negatives such as sad faces on our charts or our rewards. Again, think about those sleep associations. If we associate sleep with the have I been caught today, is going to put lots of stress on our child. So make sure we're praising the positives and ignoring, where possible and where feasible, the negatives. Like I said before, often our children feel like they don't have control over bedtime. They're told to go to bed. So offering an element of control can be very, very helpful. It's important not to give lots of choice and feel overwhelmed, but we might give our child, which pajamas do you want to wear tonight? Which bedtime story do you want? What music should we listen to? What activity do you want to do? So giving an option, maybe 2, at the very, very most 3 options, helps our child have that sense of control around bedtime. If we have a sense of control, we feel safer, don't we? So making bedtime positive. On screen here, I've got a couple of resource lines that you might find helpful, because actually there's lots of things involved in sleep, isn't there? On there, I've put an enuresis resource information centre link. They're called ERIC for short. So if we find that our children have continence issues during the night, well, actually, there's a specialist service that might be able to help you there. There's a national sleep helpline run by the Sleep Charity there. There's bed advice, and there's also Allergy UK. So thinking about the things that might be impacting our child's sleep, it might include some of those things. So that was a very short overview of sleep and a very short overview of how we might improve our child's bedtime routine to make a more pleasant and more conducive bedtime experience. I hope it was helpful. Thank you for listening to me. And if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to take questions.
Brilliant, thank you, Lisa. We have had a few questions come in, but obviously we're a little short on time, so we'll try and get through a couple of them. My son is constant of a night. He is 6 years old, on a dual for ADHD and autism. He is just a ball of energy, and even after a poor night's sleep, energy levels are still full on through the day and in school. I've tried relaxing music, sensory lights, and other techniques that just seem to fail. Any advice?
My advice would be, early on in the day, help him have as much exercise as he can. Whether that's running about, parks, whatever. So getting all of that, perhaps hyperactivity and all of that energy out in a safe and controlled way. So if we put in lots of opportunity for movement breaks throughout the day, a big opportunity for a big burst of exercise, and then after that, reinforcing the calming down activities. And I know you're saying you're putting them in, but think about what else we might be able to add in. What else we might be able to, think about that bedtime routine. How do we engage our brain as well as our body in that bedtime routine? So that might be the calming music. It might be the calming lights. It might be certain activities. It might be closing the curtains and, turning the main light off to help our bodies recognize when they need to make that melatonin. Often for children and young people with ADHD and who are autistic, that gentle proprioception might help as well. So that heavy work, that gentle proprioception may well lower those busy chemicals and increase our sleepy chemicals. So it might be, weighted blankets. It might be weighted lap pads or weighted shoulder. It might be deep pressure massage to help you get that input to calm things down. Without knowing your son, I couldn't give any more advice, but maybe try some of those tips.
Brilliant, thank you. Next question is, my son hyperfocuses on reading, so he stays up very late reading or listening to audiobooks. How can I help him sleep earlier other than remove the books? Or should she remove the books?
Okay, so if he's associating his bedtime with ongoing reading, well, perhaps building in a bedtime routine. Like it said earlier on in the slide, if he has an element of control, he's more likely to engage in that. So if we, perhaps have that conversation that reading too late into the night is impacting your sleep, what time limit shall we put? Shall we put a 7:30 or an 8 o'clock? We're giving him choice. He feels like he's in control, but we're still having him close the book or turn off the audio book in time for sleep. If it's audiobooks he's listening to and he's, needing that to go to sleep, well, perhaps silence might be unsettling for him. Think about perhaps ambient music or white noise, brown noise, those types of things. Lots of people with, a fan on, or certainly in my house, what we listen to, we put Alexa on and we put rain noises on, and that helps quieten the mind. So anything that will help to quieten the mind after that book is closed, or that audio book. Because if you think of what I'd said before, it's not necessarily, what we're even, I'd mentioned screens and things like that, but how it makes us feel, how that stimulates us. If we're reading exciting books, actually that's going to ramp up the cortisol and adrenaline in us because we're excited, we're interested. We need to put that right the way back down. So we might do a trade. Okay, well, we turn the audio book off and we turn the calming music on. So he's still got audio input, but it's not stimulating his brain and his thoughts and his ideas. I wonder whether that might help.
Thank you, Lisa. Last question, because I know we are running out of time. My son frequently wakes throughout the night, almost as if his brain doesn't rest and is always active. Sometimes this relates to things his brain has been hyper-focused on throughout the day, whatever his current topic of obsession is. Though most recently it's from anxiety, dreams, worries, and nightmares. Is there anything we can do to help him have a more restful sleep? We have tried scented stickers and lavender spray.
So what it sounds like there, just from that little bit, he's worried about bad dreams, and that's going to perpetuate, isn't it? So we're worried before we go to sleep. We're not going to have a good night's sleep. We won't get into our those sleep cycles. And then because our dream sleep is very close to wake, isn't it? Think of those things. If we've got worries in our cognitive brain, they are going to spill over into our nighttime sleep. So having lots of opportunity before bed to perhaps externalize what's happening for him. So you said he can hyperfocus. So if that's on a topic or something, we might have somewhere a point during the evening where we go, okay, tell me about this. And we have half an hour of him offloading all of his hyperfocus. We might then start the slowing down, calming down. Think about those worry things that I'd said before. So whether the worry eaters or worry boxes, again, externalizing those difficulties and challenges and stresses for him. If we can put that into place where he externalizes them, it might be, more conducive to a good night's sleep. It's not going to be instantaneous, but think about those sleep associations. Currently, he's associating sleep with bad dreams. What else can we associate sleep with? What else is calming and pleasant for him? Not pleasant and exciting, but calming and pleasant. You said about lavender. Lavender doesn't work for everybody. What does he find calming? What topics, what toys, what bedding, what colours? Think about all of those things. We might want to reiterate, it said those 5 happy things, 5 things that have gone well. We might want to, end the day thinking about those types of things. Often when we talk about those positives before we go to sleep, they're the things that we are carrying on into the night. Like I said, it won't be instantaneous, but if you put in these things into place, you may well see, an incremental positive increase there. What's happening now is he's waking up on those almost awake moments, isn't it? So like I said, where most of us would just turn over and carry on asleep, his stress response is being triggered on those almost awake moments. So perhaps having something that will remind him about those calming thoughts, when he does have those awake moments, might help going back to sleep.